No one is coming to save you. Sit with that for a second instead of flinching from it. Because that single sentence is either the most terrifying thing you'll hear today or the most liberating. And which one it becomes is the entire difference between the man who stays small and the man who finally stands up. Right now, some part of you is still waiting. Waiting for the friend who'll finally show up. The mentor who'll see your potential. The break. The rescue. The person who will walk in, recognize what you're worth, and lift you out of where you are. And every day you spend waiting, you hand the keys to your life to someone who was never going to come. That's the trap nobody names. The man waiting to be rescued isn't just passive, he's surrendered. He's given control of his fate to an external event he can't summon, can't schedule, and can't force. He's made his rise conditional on other people's choices. And the people who left, the help that never arrived, the excuses you were handed about why it's not your fault and you just need the right support, every one of those things kept you exactly where you are. Because every one of them pointed your eyes outward, toward a savior, instead of inward, toward the one asset no one can ever take. Machiavelli understood the brutal arithmetic of power better than anyone who's lived since. And here it is in its coldest form. A man who needs no one cannot be bought, cannot be threatened, cannot be controlled. Hear that again. Every form of control ever invented runs through need. They control you with what you need from them: approval, money, belonging, rescue. The man who needs nothing from you is a man you have no leverage over. He is, in the most literal sense, ungovernable by anyone but himself. And that is not loneliness. That is sovereignty, wearing the mask of loneliness so that most men never get close enough to claim it. And you found this for a reason. Some part of you is already done waiting, already felt the quiet humiliation of hoping for help that didn't come, already sensed that the rescue fantasy was costing you more than the isolation ever did. That instinct is correct. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how isolation, the thing you were taught to fear your whole life, is the forge every king was ever made in. And we start with the first thing you have to stop waiting for. Because until you stop waiting for it, nothing I tell you afterward can take hold. People quote Machiavelli and miss what's underneath it. So let me give you the real reading. Machiavelli isn't telling you to be cruel. He's telling you that love, approval, affection, being liked, that's a foundation outside your control because it lives in other people, and they can withdraw it the moment it costs them. Fear, in his sense, is really self-possession, a position so solid that others have to account for you whether they like you or not. The man who builds his life on being loved is building on borrowed ground. The man who builds on his own sufficiency builds on bedrock. And that's the whole question of this video. Whose ground are you standing on? Here's the mistake almost every man makes the moment he feels this and tries to act on it. He hears, "need no one," and he turns bitter. He decides people are the enemy, slams every door, and calls his resentment independence. That's not self-reliance. That's a wounded man hiding, and everyone can see the wound. By the end of this, you'll understand the difference between the man who pushes everyone away because he's hurt, and the man who needs no one because he's whole, and why only one of them is actually powerful, while the other is just lonely with extra steps. This isn't about hating people, it's about no longer requiring them. There's a chasm between those two, and your entire transformation lives in crossing it. If these ideas resonate with you, hit subscribe for more top-tier content. Also, drop "forged" in the comments so I know you're ready. Let's dive in. The first thing you stop waiting for is rescue. And I mean that more completely than you think. It's not just the dramatic rescue, the savior who changes everything overnight. It's the 1,000 small ones you don't even notice you're waiting for. The text back that'll make you feel chosen. The recognition at work that'll finally validate the effort. The friend who will check in so you don't have to admit how alone you felt. The moment someone notices you're struggling and steps in, unasked. Each of these is a tiny rescue fantasy. And collectively, they run your emotional life like a thermostat you don't control. Here's what the rescue fantasy actually does to you, mechanically. It outsources your stability. As long as some part of your peace depends on an external event arriving, you've placed the controls of your inner state in someone else's hands. You feel good when the validation comes, and you collapse when it doesn't. And you call that being a normal emotional person. But Machiavelli would call it what it is, a position of total strategic weakness. You've made yourself a man whose mood, whose momentum, whose sense of worth can be switched on and off by people who didn't even know they were holding the switch. That is the opposite of power. Power begins the moment your stability stops depending on anyone's arrival. And understand who taught you to wait, because that's the part that should light a fire in you. You were conditioned into the rescue fantasy by every system that benefited from your dependence. You were taught that needing people is what makes you human, that self-reliance is cold, that the man who handles things alone is somehow broken or arrogant or sad. Why? Because a man who can rescue himself is a man no institution, no relationship, no group can hold leverage over. Your dependence was never for your benefit. It was for the benefit of everyone who got to be the thing you depended on. They didn't teach you to wait because waiting helps you. They taught you to wait because your waiting keeps you reachable, manageable, controllable. So ask yourself the questions that actually sting. How much of your energy this week went into wanting someone to notice, to step in, to choose you, to make it easier? How many decisions did you delay because you were hoping you wouldn't have to make them alone? How many times did you mistake the ache of waiting for connection when it was really the slow rot of dependence? Count it honestly, because the rescue fantasy is the single heaviest chain you carry. And the strangest thing about it is this: the day you finally accept that no one is coming is not the day you break. It's the day you're finally free to build. Now go to the law underneath all of it, the cold equation Machiavelli built his understanding of power on. Control flows through need. Every chain that has ever held a man was forged from something he needed, and someone else controlled the supply of. This is not cynicism, it's mechanics. If you need approval, you can be controlled by anyone who grants or withholds it. If you need belonging, you can be controlled by any group that threatens to cast you out. If you need rescue, you are controlled by the very absence of it, kept docile by the hope it might still come. Map your needs, and you've mapped every place you can be moved against your will. Here's how the leverage works in real time, because once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. Two men want the same thing. In a negotiation, a relationship, a confrontation. One of them needs the outcome, needs the approval, needs it to work out, needs the other person not to walk away. The other can take it or leave it. Who wins? Every time, without exception, it's the man who needs it less. Need is a tell. It leaks out in how fast you compromise, how much you tolerate, how long you stay when you should go. The man who needs the outcome negotiates from his knees, no matter how tall he's standing. The man who needs nothing negotiates from a height no one can reach, because there's nothing they can threaten to take that he can't live without. This is exactly where Jung gives Machiavelli the missing depth. Because Machiavelli tells you need is the leverage, but Jung tells you why you cling to it. The needs that control you are not really about the thing you think you need. The man desperate for approval is not actually hungry for praise. He's trying to fill a place inside himself that was never integrated. A wound he's outsourcing to other people to bandage. Jung's whole work points here. The parts of yourself you haven't faced and owned become the needs that other people get to control. You hand the world power over you at the exact points where you haven't yet made yourself whole. Integrate the wound. Actually face the part of you that's starving for the external thing, and the need dissolves, and with it, the leverage. So understand what's actually being asked of you. It is not to stop caring about people. It is to stop needing them to regulate what should be regulated from within. The man who needs no one isn't the man who feels nothing for anyone. He's the man who has done the internal work of becoming his own foundation, so that connection becomes a choice he makes from strength, not a hunger he satisfies from weakness. When you need someone, you cannot truly choose them, you're just feeding the need. Only the man who needs no one can love, work, and stand beside others freely, because only he is choosing it rather than being driven to it. Self-reliance doesn't end relationship. It's the only thing that makes real relationship possible. Now, the reframe that turns your whole story inside out. Because this is where most men get it catastrophically wrong. You've been taught that isolation is punishment, that being alone is what happens when you failed, when the friends left, the help didn't come, the room emptied out. You've experienced your solitude as evidence of something wrong with you, a sentence handed down for being unlovable, or unlucky, or not enough. And so you've spent your alone time trying to escape it, numb it, fill it, end it, never once realizing that the thing you were trying to escape was the exact furnace you needed to step into. Here's the truth no one told you. Every man you admire for his strength was forged in a period of profound aloneness. Not because aloneness is pleasant, but because it's the only environment where the self gets built without interference. When you're surrounded, supported, rescued, you never develop the internal structure because you never have to. Why build the muscle when someone's always there to lift the weight for you? It's only when the help is gone, when there's genuinely no one coming, that you're forced to develop the one thing that makes a king, the capacity to be your own source. Isolation isn't the absence of your support system. For the man who understands it, isolation is the construction site of a self that needs no support system. And this is Jungian individuation meeting Machiavellian power at the precise point they were always meant to meet. Jung said the journey to becoming a whole, sovereign individual requires a withdrawal from the collective, a period where you stop taking your identity from the group and start forging it from within. You cannot become yourself while you're still defined by who's around you. The crowd gives you a borrowed identity. Solitude is where you build your own. So the loneliness you've been treating as a curse is, in Jung's exact framework, the necessary passage every individuated man walks through. The friends who left didn't ruin your forge, they lit it. They put you, often against your will, into the one condition where a real self could finally take shape. So reframe everything, right now, completely. The empty room is not your failure, it's your forge. The help that never came didn't abandon you. It freed you from the dependence that would have kept you soft. The excuses you were handed about needing the right environment, the right people, the right support, those were not kindnesses. They were sedatives, keeping you asleep in the rescue fantasy while your forge sat cold. You don't need to escape your isolation, you need to start using it. Because every hour you spend building yourself alone is an hour no one can take credit for, no one can hold over you, and no one can ever take away. That is how kings are made, not in the crowd, but in the years the crowd wasn't there. So let's get concrete about what you actually build in the forge. Because reframing isolation as opportunity means nothing if you don't know what to forge in it. The man who needs no one isn't built by accident. He's built by deliberately developing the internal sources of the things he used to seek externally. Every external need you've been carrying has an internal counterpart you can build. You sought approval outside, you build self-respect inside. You sought rescue from others, you build competence in yourself. You sought stability from connection, you build it from your own discipline. This is the entire project, systematically replacing external supply lines with internal ones, until there's nothing left that someone else holds the switch to. Start with the foundation, which is competence. Because self-reliance without capability is just delusion. The man who needs no one can need no one because he can actually do the things, earn, solve, build, endure, on his own. So you begin by ruthlessly building capability in the areas where you currently depend. Where do you need rescue most? That's your first build site. The skill you keep hoping someone else will handle, the responsibility you keep waiting to be saved from. You go directly at it, and you become the man who can do it himself. Every competence you build severs a dependence, and severed dependence is the literal substance that self-reliance is made of. You don't talk your way into needing no one. You build your way there, one capability at a time. Then build the internal foundation, the harder one. Self-validation, the integration Jung pointed at. This is the daily practice of becoming the source of your own worth instead of the beggar of others. It means making decisions and standing behind them without needing them ratified by someone else's approval. It means doing the work when no one's watching and no one will applaud, and finding the recognition internally where you used to outsource it. It means facing the wounded parts of you that crave external validation and actually sitting with them, owning them, integrating them, instead of running to other people to medicate them. This is the inner forge, and it's slower than building competence. But it's the part that makes you truly ungovernable, because a man who validates himself has removed the single biggest lever the world had on him. And expect the resistance, because it comes hard and it comes specific. The moment you start building alone, the rescue fantasy will fight for its life, and it'll use guilt as its weapon. You'll feel like you're isolating yourself, becoming cold, pushing people away, turning into someone bitter and hard. You'll hear that voice saying, "You can't do this alone. You're not meant to. Needing people is human. Who do you think you are?" Hear it clearly. That's the conditioning fighting to keep you reachable. The guilt you feel building your own foundation is not wisdom. It's the residue of everyone who needed you dependent. What you're calling cold isolation is just the unfamiliar feeling of finally standing on ground that's yours. Give it real time. Months, not days, because forges don't work overnight. And one day you'll notice you stopped waiting for anyone. And the strange thing is, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like power arriving. Picture the man on the other side of this forge. He's not bitter. He's not hiding. He's not the wounded man who slammed the doors. He's something else entirely. A man so complete in himself that he can walk into any room and need nothing from anyone in it. He chooses his company instead of clinging to it. He can lose the approval and keep his center. He can take the threat and not flinch, because there's nothing they hold that he can't live without. He can be left and survive it, because he was never standing on anyone but himself. That man is unbribable, unthreatenable, uncontrollable. That man is what Machiavelli pointed at, and Jung made possible. And he was forged in the exact aloneness you've spent your whole life trying to escape. You walked in here waiting to be saved, handing the keys to your life to people who were never coming. You're walking out with the only truth that ever set a man free. No one is coming. And that is not your tragedy, it's your liberation. The friends who left, the help that never came, the excuses you carried. Strip them all away, and what's left is the one asset no one can ever take. You, standing on yourself. No friends to wait for, no help to depend on, no excuses to hide behind. That was never the description of a broken man. That's the description of how kings are made. If this reached something real in you, drop the word "forged" in the comments. Not to perform it, but to mark the moment you stopped waiting to be rescued and started building yourself. Type it so it's real. And subscribe, not for motivation, because motivation needs constant rescue, and that's the whole problem. Subscribe because this is the one place that doesn't tell you to wait for help, find your village, lean on others. This is where we take Machiavellian strategy and the deepest psychology of power and turn them into operating instructions for becoming a man who needs no one. The self-reliance, the silent sovereignty, the unshakable foundation. The people who controlled you were counting on you never building. If you're done waiting for a rescue that was never coming, this is your room now. And whatever you do, don't stop here. The video on screen matters more than you think. It's the next layer, the one that turns this single principle into a complete architecture of self-reliance. The kind that makes you not just independent, but genuinely untouchable in the places that used to break you. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. I'll see you there. See what others miss. Know what others fear. Become who others can't.